Ched Evans is not guilty. The footballer is cleared at his rape retrial. The Welsh player has always denied the young woman's claim that she was too drunk to consent. Now new evidence has persuaded a jury.
I wholeheartedly apologise to anyone who might have been affected by the events of the night in question.
Also tonight, the Tiny brothers mauled by a dog. One has died, the other seriously injured.
A warning from the Governor of the Bank of England tonight. The falling pound will mean higher food prices.
How about some tea, Ern? Tea!
A wise move. Eric and Ernie back together in Blackpool.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin and Ranveer Singh.
Good evening. Footballer Ched Evans said he was overwhelmed with relief after he was finally cleared by a jury of raping a drunk young woman. After the verdict was read out, he hugged his fiancée Natasha in court and outside publicly thanked her for standing by him. He also apologised to all those affected.
The footballer was originally convicted of raping the 19-year-old in 2012 before the Court of Appeal quashed it. At his second trial, fresh evidence about the alleged victim's sexual history convinced the jury he was innocent. From Cardiff Crown Court, here's our Wales correspondent, Rupert Evelyn.
As he stepped out of the dock and into the arms of his fiancée, Ched Evans was in tears. 5 years after he was accused of rape, 2 trials, a prison sentence, and now a not guilty verdict. Finally, he was vindicated.
In the early hours of the 30th of May 2011, an incident occurred in North Wales that was to change my life and the lives of others forever. That incident did not involve the commission of a criminal offence, and today I am overwhelmed with relief that the jury agreed. Thanks go to, most notably, my fiancée Natasha, who chose, perhaps incredibly, to support me in my darkest hour.
Success at the retrial for the professional footballer hinged on new evidence relating to consent. His defence argued that the woman who claimed she'd been raped behaved in a similar manner inside this hotel room with Ched Evans as she had with other men in her life. The prosecution attempted to suggest that a £50,000 reward and a Facebook message from Evans's fiancée Natasha Massey begging a witness to help may have skewed the evidence. The jury decided otherwise.
Whilst my innocence has now been established, I wish to make it clear that I wholeheartedly apologise to anyone who might have been affected by the events of the night in question.
Evans won't say who his apology was directed at. Ched, is your apology aimed at the woman who made the complaint against you?
There's no comment. We've made the statement. You can read the statement.
Was the apology directed to her?
The statement is clear. We're leaving it
to
as
those
that.
affected, I just wonder whether the woman who made the complaint...
You can read it however you want. The statement is a statement and we're standing by that.
Ched Evans is now expected to return to the football pitch. A free man, cleared of an extremely serious sexual allegation. Being drunk, said the CPS today, does not mean that a person relinquishes their right to consent. The CPS thanked the alleged victim in this case for her courage in coming forward with her evidence. Ched Evans did not know her name. He'd never even met her. He never spoke to her. And by his own admission during this trial, his actions that night, which included cheating on his girlfriend, were, he said during the trial, not the best.
All right, Rupert, thank you very much indeed.
A 4-month-old baby boy who was mauled to death by a family dog has been named tonight. Archie Darby was killed and his 22-month-old brother, Daniel J, was left seriously injured in the attack in Colchester yesterday.
Now, in the past few minutes, Archie's parents described him as their beautiful little angel. Earlier, neighbours described how police had to force their way into the property to help. Paul Davis has more.
Archie Darby, on the left, was just 4 months old when he was killed by the family pet. His 22-month-old brother Daniel is still in intensive care. The attack happened at the family home in Colchester. Their mother saw it all.
This is a tragic incident where a young child has lost his life. The dog, which has now been destroyed, is believed to be a Staffordshire Bull Terrier type dog. This is obviously a very difficult time for the family, who are being supported by specially trained officers.
It's believed it was not a banned breed and no arrests have been made. The 3 victims were the only people in the property at the time of the incident.
The police had to smash the front door in, although they tried to get in touch with a little child upstairs to open the door, which I presume it must have been the 22-month-old child, and he couldn't, and of course his mother was in the bath or in bathroom, so what they had to do, smash the door open.
Tonight, the parents released a statement describing the brothers as happy, lovable little boys. Heaven has gained a beautiful little angel, it added. Paul Davis, ITV News.
The Governor of the Bank of England has warned tonight that poor people will suffer the most from rising food prices and inflation. Mark Carney said the fall in the value of the pound would see things get difficult for consumers over the next 2 years. He made the comments as he visited Birmingham. From there, our political correspondent Paul Brand has this.
The Governor may be closely watching the effects of Brexit, but not often out on the street. So today he swapped the bank for Birmingham, meeting people at the city's town hall to listen to their concerns, but also to add to them. Warning today that all our lives are about to get a little bit more expensive as prices rise on our way out of the EU.
And they're starting to go up. I mean, the principal reason will be the movement in the currency. That will flow through to the prices on the high street relatively quickly. You know, the least well-off in society tend to feel it the most because they spend most of their incomes on everyday goods.
Inflation, the rate at which prices rise, is currently at 0.6%. But with the pound falling by as much as 18% against the dollar since the EU referendum, imports are more expensive, meaning inflation could reach as much as 3% next year. It's families like Kevin and Chloe's that the Governor's most concerned about. She's studying while he works in a supermarket. They told me the £1,000 a month they have to look after all 3 of them will now need to go even further.
It's going to be really difficult because we've got a budget. We stay in the budget of £20 a week. That's Monday to Sunday, and we're hoping to not go over that budget after the Brexit. We don't know where we're going to get the extra money from.
But look elsewhere in our economy and some are willing to pay. The Governor shaved interest rates this summer to keep businesses like this engineering firm moving. They'd rather see higher prices if it means the rest of the economy is solid.
It's a case of not overreacting. In other words, you see inflation going up because it will go up, no question about it. The domestic consumer is going to start paying a lot more for imported goods. And if we react too quickly, then we're going to see a bad effect elsewhere.
So Mark Carney heads back to the Bank of England, juggling those needs, knowing the price of his decisions will be felt in our pockets out on the street. Paul Brand, ITV News, Birmingham.
And concerns about the long-term effects of Brexit on the economy were discussed in Downing Street today. The global boss of Nissan met with Theresa May, seeking assurances that the UK will remain competitive outside the EU. Our Deputy Political Editor Chris Shipp is in Downing Street tonight. And Chris, Nissan, of course, a big employer, particularly in the northeast. There really is a lot at stake here.
Yeah, Mark, a huge amount at stake, and the two had a lot to discuss when they met here earlier this afternoon. You know, this meeting was arranged after the boss of Nissan said at the Paris Motor Show a couple of weeks ago that Nissan would suspend all future investment in its huge plant in Sunderland in the northeast of England until it gets some reassurances from government. What Nissan is worried about is that if it builds the new model of the Nissan Qashqai in Sunderland, it might have to pay export tariffs on the cars it sends to the EU unless we get a sort of better deal from Brexit. Now, when Carlos Ghosn came out of Downing Street earlier, we threw lots of questions at him. Did you get an agreement with Theresa May? Did she promise you, as you asked for, some form of compensation if you've got to start paying those export tariffs? And he wouldn't say anything to us. But he did get into a Sunderland-built Nissan Qashqai, and I'm sure that choice was not made purely by coincidence. For all the warm words, Mark, after this meeting here today from both sides, both from Theresa May and from Mr Ghosn, at no point has Nissan removed its threat to suspend investment. It employs 7,000 people in Sunderland. The car industry is hugely worried about the potential impact on export tariffs, and Nissan will have to make a decision by the end of this year. But it looks like there was no meeting of minds here today.
All right, Chris, thank you very much.
A fresh inquest will take place into the death of a soldier at Deepcut barracks 21 years ago. Private Sean Benton was found with 5 bullet wounds to his chest at the training base in Surrey. The original inquest recorded a verdict of suicide, but today a High Court judge said new evidence had come to light.
A Royal Marine reservist who stole weapons from a military base has been told he will face years in jail. At the Old Bailey today, Martin Shannon admitted having a stash of ammunition, hand grenades and plastic explosives.
Within the past hour, another woman has come forward to say that the US presidential candidate Donald Trump sexually assaulted her. The former model says the incident happened in a New York nightclub in the early 1990s. Let's get more from Washington, our correspondent there, Robert Moore. Robert, what has she been saying?
Well, think about this. For the last week, Donald Trump has consistently and vociferously denied all of the allegations being levelled against him. He has said all of his accusers have been making it up. They've been lying. It's all part of a sort of a conspiracy by the media against him. But as you say, in the last few minutes, another woman has stepped forward. Her name is Kristen Anderson. This happened back in the 1990s. She was in her 20s, an aspiring model, and she went to a New York nightclub. And this is what she says happened next.
The person on my right, who unbeknownst to me at that time was Donald Trump, put their hand up my skirt. And as I pushed the hand away and I got up and I turned around and I see these eyebrows, very distinct eyebrows of Donald Trump. And I got up and I moved and I continued to talk with my friends. And they said, "Oh, that's Donald Trump." I was like, ew, he's gross. He just put his hand up my skirt.
Well, it's uncannily similar, of course, to other accounts we've heard in recent days. Certainly these are accusations now that are in danger of almost completely overwhelming his bid for the White House. The question for many analysts now, with just 25 days to go, is not so much whether he can win in November, because polls suggest he's falling significantly behind. The question has really become, can he remain a viable candidate up to and including Election Day itself?
Indeed. Thank you, Robert Moore, for now, live from Washington.
Right, still to come on the ITV Evening News. Back in his enclosure tonight, thank goodness. But how did this gorilla escape at London Zoo?
And a new tribute unveiled to one of our favourite comedy double acts.
People look at that statue and they smile.
Yeah.
You know, Morecambe and Wise, and they smile automatically. Nobody goes away with a long face.
Those stories and more after the break. Welcome back. The Home Office has started processing refugee children in the so-called jungle camp in Calais ahead of its proposed demolition by French authorities. Britain has agreed to take in hundreds of children who have existing family here, but it's still not clear what will happen to the others who don't meet that criteria. And as our national editor Allegra Stratton reports from the camp, time is running out.
Daniel! Well, the kids' tent was this one.
Days away from demolition, the race is on to find the unaccompanied children of the Calais jungle.
18 Eritreans who nobody knew about.
Before what they call home is destroyed.
Or do you know where is Sene Zegzi?
First, these children have to be identified.
And some of
them are late teens, aren't they? But some of them are really quite young.
The ones I worry about are
14-year-olds.
these 13, 14. I'm trying to find all the ones who are 13, 14 because camp's going to go. They're the ones who will be in real risk.
Child refugee advocate Sue Clayton is one of the volunteers trying to help. Before the Home Office arrived, over 5 days, she made her own list of 78 unaccompanied minors. Charities believe there are 387 children with a legitimate UK claim. The Home Secretary has said she believes Britain could take around 300, but the UK has left it very late. Until today, it had not been visible in camp.
Where's your mum and dad?
Moment.
Mommy in Eritrea.
No family here?
Yeah, in Europa, no family.
Jonah is a 15-year-old Christian Eritrean, a persecuted minority in his home country. He left 3 years ago. Because of legislation rushed through the UK Parliament this year, he may reach the UK, but others won't.
You're not Bambino.
No, you're
He's not Bambino.
This Afghani proves he is 11 years old and unaccompanied, but he still may not qualify.
Oh my God. Oh, right, okay.
Before the Home Office arrived, at a cafe on the main street, a group of London lawyers set up an impromptu clinic.
In this room, there are children as young as 9. A team of expert lawyers arrived from Britain to figure out what the legal rights of these children are. They need to do this quickly because soon this camp, their current home, will close down.
Seeing this many children effectively roaming around without any kind of assistance, and it's really quite an experience.
Finally, the Home Office arrived in camp today, announcing by tannoy the start of processing.
This is really important that you're here because this has just started today.
Many adults turned up, but it will only be eligible children that are successful. With just days to go, right now it's hard to see how the government gets all of them out in time. Allegra Stratton, ITV News, Calais.
The Foreign Office has issued guidance to tourists heading to Thailand following the death of the country's king at the age of 88. King Bhumibol Adulyadej died in hospital yesterday. British tourists are being told to respect the feelings and sensitivities of the country's people.
Here, the scary clown craze has led to a sharp increase in calls to the helpline Childline. The charity says it's received over 100 calls in the last week from distressed children.
Now, Kumbuka the gorilla was safely back on public display today as questions were raised over how he managed to escape his enclosure. Armed police were called to London Zoo yesterday evening as staff tried to recapture the 29-stone silverback. No one was hurt in the incident, but campaigners say it was a startling reminder of the dangers of caging wild animals, as Martha Fairley reports.
It's really sad, isn't it?
Back in the public eye, Kumbuka the silverback gorilla looks somewhat subdued, perhaps contemplating his failed bid for freedom, which put London Zoo and around 100 visitors in lockdown yesterday afternoon.
We weren't sure what animal it was, but then people saying gorilla, if it can get out of there, it can get in this tiny cafe. So yeah, it was a bit panicky.
I think it's the uncertainty of you don't actually know what's happening that's a little bit scary.
Yeah, and they just kept saying it's a zoo emergency, it's fine, we're like an emergency.
Emergency is not fine.
Kumbuka was not so calm yesterday, frightening visitors as he hurled his 29-stone bulk at the glass window, apparently distressed, raising questions about the design of his £5 million enclosure.
I think the more we learn about gorillas and the other great apes and their cognitive powers, the more many people question the ethics of keeping such an intelligent social animal in what is essentially a yard. It's an enclosure that is designed with the human desire to see gorillas in mind rather than the psychological needs of the gorillas.
London Zoo won't confirm reports Kumbuka escaped to a private keeper's area after a gate was left open, but insist there was never any danger.
He was in a secure keeper area and the situation was dealt with in a very safe manner, both for our staff and also for the gorilla himself, who is now fully recovered.
And while Kumbuka's been rewarded with some special treats, animal rights groups say this incident shows the risk of keeping wild animals in captivity. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
And if visitors at London Zoo thought that was a close encounter, what about this? One diver had a miraculous escape from a great white shark off Mexico. It starts with the shark biting at a piece of tuna tied to a rope, but it lunges so hard it breaks through the bars of an underwater cage where the diver is filming.
So the boat crew rushes to open the top of the cage while the shark thrashes around inside. Any blood you can see, don't worry, it's not from the diver. The shark does eventually swim away.
Good grief. Luckily, the diver is experienced enough to know to stay very still at the bottom of the cage, and to the relief of everyone, he quickly emerges once the shark has gone. One very lucky escape.
And finally tonight, Blackpool's best-loved double act are tonight back where they belong. A new statue of Eric Morecambe and Ernie Wise has been unveiled in the town's historic Winter Gardens.
Yes, the famous venue is where the comedians made more than 1,000 appearances. The sculpture, which, believe it or not, is the first of them together, was unveiled in front of friends, family and fans, among them Damon Green.
They performed here so often it was their spiritual home. And today, Britain's best-loved comedy double act returned to Blackpool. Eric Morecambe and Ernie Wise back together, immortalised in bronze, unveiled by Eric's family, proud as anything.
People look at that statue and they smile.
Yeah.
You know, Morecambe and Wise, and they smile automatically. Nobody goes away with a long face.
No.
So that is in itself is a tribute, isn't it? Brilliant.
You're playing all the wrong notes.
It was their performances on the small screen that made them part of British life, but Eric and Ernie topped the bill for decades on the Golden Mile. It's estimated they performed in Blackpool 1,000 times in their career, and the millions who watched them missed them as much today as they ever did.
I'm playing all the right notes, but not necessarily in the right order.
For Eric's family to meet his fans is still a joy.
They seem to genuinely miss them in the same way that we do, and they can get emotional about it, still watch, and yeah, it's very touching, it really is.
It is hard to look at these two without smiling. The sculptor says he tried to capture the warmth of the lifelong friendship Eric and Ernie enjoyed.
As soon as you start thinking about it, a smile beams on your face, and these are hard times, and it's great to see people enjoying it.
Your arms being warm. There will never be anyone else quite like them. 40 years on, back at the Winter Gardens. Damon Green, ITV News, in Blackpool.
That's it. Raggy Omar will be bringing you sunshine at 10.
But from everybody here, have a very good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.